Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Hey everybody, it's Tom Dutta, like Bud of the Quiet Warrior. We're a bit late getting started today, and I wanted just to say we're live, broadcasting you live. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and our latest edition, Rumble. We were late. We had some gremlins in the studio. What are we doing here? We're live streaming. It's the next generation of podcasting. This will be reproduced as a Final Cut premiere on social media across YouTube as a video, and also across all podcast channels internationally. That'll be a future release. So you're getting us 3 times with this initial broadcast. I'm really excited about the guest that I'm going to bring on. He's in the green room, but before we do that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about his story. So I'm going to set this up, everyone, and we call this segment the hook. So stand by while I do a few things on my dashboard here, then we're going to share that with you. What would it be like to know that we can hook you to stay for a while on the podcast? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Hook. Today's guest discovered that sometimes the most ancient paths lead to the most modern breakthroughs. When I first connected with Reino Gevers, I knew him as the author of multiple works, including a book I read before, Deep Walking for Body, Mind, and Soul. A man who had walked Spain's Camino de Santiago, get this, 12 times. Impressive, certainly. But when I dug deeper into his story, I uncovered something far more profound. Picture this, a 3-year-old boy whose father undergoes electric shock therapy for depression. A family secret buried so deep it wouldn't surface until Reino was in his late 30s. The treatment was brutal. Patients were strapped down, writhing in pain, as electrical current coursed through their brains, hoping to reset their chemistry and reverse their mental condition. Fast forward now 20 years as a journalist in his career during the digital revolution's chaos. Reino watched colleagues succumb to burnout, complete emotional and physical exhaustion. As he found himself negotiating retrenched packages and job cutbacks, managing the human cost of industry upheaval, he realized something chilling. He was next. But instead of accepting his fate in what he calls the news factory, Reino made a radical choice. He walked away, literally. Yes, 500 miles across Spain on an 800-year-old pilgrimage route. As he put it, people who decide to take 500-mile walk on the Camino are not your ordinary folk going on a hike. They are often dealing with the pain of loss on a relationship level, financial or spiritual level. Some are dealing with the diagnosis of a life-threatening medical condition. That first Camino, he said, changed everything. The journalist who reported stories before became fascinated by the deeper human stories of others. The transformation that happens when we strip away everything external and we walk towards something we can't yet name. 12 Caminos, I remark at that. Reino has built his Power Body Mind platform, his health mentoring practice, and now lives in Spain in the island of Mallorca. But his latest work, the novel Sages, Saints, and Sinners, reveals perhaps his deepest truth yet. Set during the Black Death of the 14th century, it follows Isabel, a nun who breaks her religious vows for forbidden love, and Geronimo, a monk sold into slavery who discovers freedom through losing everything. Their journey through medieval plague mirrors Reino's own transformation, from institutional conformity to authentic living. As Reino writes, in essence, we need to become who we are meant to become when we were born. And it is in empty and quiet spaces of nature where we can realign and open the soul to the whispers from the universe. Here's what makes this person and his story worthy of the Quiet Warrior Show. Reino discovered that our modern burnout epidemic is its own kind of plague, attacking not our bodies but our souls. And like the medieval pilgrims, seeking healing at sacred sites, we too must sometimes lose everything to find who we really are. From a family secret about mental breakdown to building a practice that helps others break through, Reino proves that the longest journey is often the one that leads us home to ourselves. Today, we explore how ancient wisdom illuminates modern crisis, why walking 500 miles can heal what therapy cannot touch, and how sometimes the most radical act is simply becoming who you were always meant to be. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual stage, Reino Gevers. Reino, welcome.
Thank you, and it's great to be back on your show, Tom.
What was it like sitting there while listening to who you are?
Well, you summarized my biography beautifully, and especially going back to the early childhood and the buried family secret and how that influenced my whole life, actually. And that is really an insightful moment for me as well.
I can see that. And thank you for saying your feelings. You know, when we look at you, and one of the things we can find from others is look at their body language and their inflection and their emotion. And I can see it's deeply moving for you. And so, everyone, that's what the show is all about. It's about the hero's journey. It's about storytelling. So, Reino, are you ready to go into Plato's garden?
We are.
All right, let me set this up, everyone. What would it be like to go into Plato's garden with Reino Gevers? Well, here we are. Let me add to the stage something so that I can show you if you're watching this. Plato's garden was an Athenian philosopher. That was Plato. During the classical period in ancient Greece, he was the founder of the Platonist school of thought in the academy, from the Greek word academia, and the first institution of higher learning in the Western world, apparently that was. So right now what we're doing is we're going to be talking through what we call the influences of context. 3 areas. Macro, which is the global world, how the global world was influencing the work that you do. Number 2 is mezzo, what was happening in your sector, where you apply your trade, and that influenced your public work. And third, micro, which is my favorite, I know it's personally. What was going on with you? And when we do this, what we're doing is we're giving the audience a chance to explore and critically think about all the information across those areas, and then come up with a deeper meaning about who you are and what your story is. So let's get into it. I'm going to set the stage. Your new novel, Sagas, Saints, and Sinners, and we'll hold that up in a minute, isn't just historical fiction. It's processing your own journey from the news factory, as you said, to beginning a guide for souls seeking meaning. So let's start with that moment when you realized the media world was slowly killing your spirit. Tell us about that.
The media world is focused on negativity. Bad news sells. News that emotionalizes sells. And it took me a long time to realize this, that preoccupation with negativity makes you ill. And my whole life was centered around news for more than 2 decades. So I was a news junkie. So working for a news agency, obviously, you're following global events all the time, 24/7. And I was also doing late night shifts, early morning shifts on the news desk. And then as the digital revolution started, that was like 97, 98, and then really took off in the mid 2000s, the whole industry changed completely. And I found a lot of my colleagues going into burnout. I felt emotional and physical exhaustion myself. And I was questioning, what is the meaning of all this? Why am I feeling so exhausted every day, day in and out? And that's how I gradually began to reflect on why I was increasingly feeling very unhappy in my job. Because when I started my career in my early 20s as a news reporter, I really loved my job.
Yeah.
Because this was in South Africa when I was still working in South Africa, because you were literally experiencing history in the making. And I felt real purpose and meaning working as a journalist, because what you're doing, you're interviewing and you're dealing with people all the time. And I was obviously covering a lot of the people who were affected by the apartheid laws, the forced removals, the people who were interrogated by security police, who had suffered torture, who had suffered detention.
Yeah.
And I felt I was doing something with a purpose.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I was literally forced to leave the country because things got very dicey during the state of emergency. And I went to Europe and worked for a news agency in Germany for more than 2 decades.
Yeah, everybody, Reino Gevers here. If you go back into the archives, you can find the first 2 shows we did where he dives deep into parts of that story he's just started to tell us. Hey, Reino, let's get into the micro in Plato's Garden here, which is about you personally. So I'm going to throw something out. I call this the family secret. So you were 3 when your father had electric shock therapy for depression, a family secret buried for decades. How did learning this truth reshape everything you thought you knew about mental health?
You see, what happened was that my beloved godfather had a cancer diagnosis and knew that he only had a few more weeks to live.
Oh my!
And he said to me, "Look, I need to tell you something." And he told me the whole story that I never knew, that the whole family never spoke about, because I always questioned, why was my father so quiet, and always going into long hours of solitude. He was very different to his siblings. My uncles, his brothers, were very energetic, business-like people, very successful people. And I always saw my father as a failure. He was not stepping up as a father, really. My mother was running the household. And I always wondered, why is my father so different? And then this came out that he had a nervous breakdown. He felt a lot of pressure from my grandfather, who wanted him to become a farmer and to eventually take over the farm. But he couldn't cope with the pressure, the expectations from my grandfather. And what happened at that time is that if you had a mental collapse, you had brutal electroshock treatment. So I did a bit of research on this at the time.
It's crazy.
And they literally kill off all your emotions.
Wow. I want to thank you for sharing that. First of all, thanks for being vulnerable. We say a prayer for your father in heaven. You know, it's interesting, the evolution of mental health therapy, and it's a crucial part of the backdrop of your story. That's why I asked about that. But today, you're right, the therapies, and having gone through a concussion and dealing with depression and things like PTSD myself, the modalities and the way we heal now are so different. But this is what makes your story to me remarkable, because you've taken a journey into another way to heal. So let's get back into Plato's Garden here. I call this the media burnout epidemic. And so carrying on, you watch colleagues, as you said, drop like flies during the digital revolution, complete burnout. Then you realized that you were next. Take us into that moment when you realized that. Tell us about that.
Well, look, my work was also impacting my private life, because I had a very dysfunctional marriage, and both the pressure I was under during my marriage and the pressure at work were compounding.
Yeah.
And I was at the point where I came to the recognition that you got to change something. When if you don't change something in the next few weeks, you're going to end up like some of your colleagues with a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And the signs were there: sleepless nights, physical, emotional exhaustion. And a friend of mine said, "Well, you might just take yourself out for a few weeks and go for a walk." And this came at, and then I picked up this book, The Pilgrimage by Paulo Coelho. And
yeah, I've read that.
I read this in one night, and literally it was about 14 days later, I took a flight to Spain and I walked the Camino. The first time, this was just a short section, but I was physically and emotionally in such a bad place that I could only do 120 kilometers. And I came back the following year and did the whole route. And that is the pilgrimage route that really ended up changing my whole life.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and you and I have talked offline too. The audience just needs to know my wife and I are planning to do the Camino next year. And we've been watching a lot of videos of people who have done it and the spiritual journey and transformation. But, we go for a walk outside here. I live around a body of water called the Burrard Inlet, beautiful forest in British Columbia. And we do 5-kilometer walks. And when I'm thinking about the Camino there, if you're doing 500 miles, some people will do it in a period of 40, 30, 45 days. That's incredible. Let me throw this at you. The first Camino call, instead of accepting your fate, something inside you said, walk 500 miles. What was that inner voice telling you? You sort of touched on it, that you read a book and somebody said, go for a walk. But what do you think your inner voice was telling you to do?
I felt a deep calling intuitively.
Yeah.
When I saw this book and the cover, and it just spoke to me.
Yeah.
And it spoke to me. The more I read, the more I delved into this book, and convinced me that you got to do this walk. And of course, that short walk I did the first time really ignited something within me. And when I did it the second time, obviously I did a lot more preparation. Did a lot of physical exercise and did a lot more research. And I did an alternative route coming from France and then crossing the Pyrenees Mountains. And I've actually, during the past few years, done a lot of the pilgrimage routes off the main, commonly known Camino Frances.
Yes.
That is fairly well known. The Camino Frances is the most populous one. But what few people know is that the whole of Europe during medieval times had many pilgrimage paths. One of them is the Walsingham route in the UK. This was prior to Henry VIII, when a lot of British pilgrims walked through the United Kingdom and then took a boat to Spain and then walked through Spain to Santiago.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Going back into the personal story, I'm connecting the dots here and to the audience. We're hearing Reino's backstory. So we started the story about your father, and I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. It's interesting to me because if I do some critical thinking about connecting that, I call it meshing it together. You experienced this with your father. Later in your career, you started seeing people dropping like flies and having what was burnout. And, there's two types of people who will ignore that call and just keep burning out and working hard and lose their job. But you stopped, you heard this call. And so something in my mind connects to that story of your father. You experienced somebody else in your life who had a critical situation with their health. And I think that some of that might have shaped the way you responded in your own life. Let me ask you to do us a favor and hold up a book that you've just written there. It's a beautiful book, and just read out the title of it.
Sages, Saints, and Sinners.
Yes.
Sages, Saints, and Sinners.
And we're doing stereo here. We'll reveal later on the show a surprise review. Thank you. That's a keeper. Beautiful book. I've read it cover to cover, and my wife is actually reading it too. So we promise that she'll get a review put up. And what's the significance of the cover? Just to comment on that.
Well, I chose the title "Sages, Saints, and Sinners" because it's very much also a symbol of our times, actually. What humanity experienced in the 14th century is much what we're experiencing today with disconnect.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is the sages and the saints, the ones with wisdom, whose voices are being drowned by hysteria and by hate and fanaticism,
Yeah.
coming from false beliefs and fear, basically fear.
Yeah.
People in the world today are suffering from the virus of fear,
Yeah.
and emotional anxiety and disconnect.
It's interesting. I think about they call it in mental health therapy. I've learned about the brain, and the brain looks for danger first to keep us safe and help us keep moving forward. So we default for looking for danger, and the world, as you talked about, with especially through social media and the things that we find outside in the world, we can get stuck in that mode of fear. There are people I've heard say things like "do it in fear," break through fear. But I've since realized, Reino, that you can't have a positive and negative thought at the same time. The brain doesn't work that way. And if you get stuck in that fear, a lot of people can't break through it. I want to throw something out here. We're going to go into what I call mezzo, which is the sector where you do your work and the influences around your work on the same theme. I call this the medieval wisdom, modern crisis. So the novel you just showed us, your novel explores how, in my view, 14th century the 14th century plague mirrors our burnout epidemic. What ancient truths did you uncover about suffering and resilience?
Well, going back on this journey to medieval times, humanity at the time was confronted by this pandemic which came out of nowhere. And people were suddenly dying like flies everywhere, in the villages and the towns. Nobody knew where this came from. So what people obviously did, there was no science to pinpoint the reasons for this happening. And what do people do when they are in fear and anxiety? They find scapegoats. And the scapegoats in medieval times were the minorities, the Jews, the Muslims, all those people who were different. They were blamed for causing the plague, God's punishment for sinful behavior. The midwives, for instance, also, they were burnt at the stake because people blamed the midwives for breaking God's laws. God's laws being teaching women how to practice contraception.
Yes.
And today, going forward, fast forward to today's world, what are we seeing? We're seeing the loss of nuance. We're seeing growth in global fanaticism in many areas, and there we go back to our mental state collectively. What social media is doing is it's compounding anxiety and fear, because through the algorithms, the posts that emotionalize, that create fear, get the most clicks. So all the clickbait is focused on this type of media. And if we don't detach ourselves from this influence, then we get sucked into this maelstrom.
Yeah, I can start too. Thank you. I'm going to hold it up again. My copy, Reino was good enough to send me a personal copy. Thank you, of his book, Sages, Saints, and Sinners. I just want to respond to what you said, that this, the algorithms, a lot of people don't understand this, but if you're on social media, whether it's YouTube where we're broadcasting now or other channels, and you click something, the algorithms will give you more of what you click. And so you can just by accident in this day and age click on a video that has propaganda or perhaps these words misinformation, disinformation, which I don't always agree with. But you can just look at something, oh, that headline looks dramatic because it's got fear, as you said, it attracts our brain. There's danger, I better check that out. But then you get more of the same, and soon your feed where you're getting information doesn't give you the other side of it, which is the positive side of what's going on in the world. I just want to throw this out here and get your comment. I did some research when I read the book, and I summarize it in a paragraph. I just going to read this out. Reino's Sages, Saints, and Sinners is a sweeping historical novel set during the Black Death, 1347 to 1349, following two lovers whose forbidden relationship becomes a metaphor for authentic living in the face of institutional oppression. And then the story, Isabel, a young noblewoman forced into a convent to escape an arranged marriage, and Geronimo, a Muslim orphan raised as a Christian monk, meet and fall in love on the Spanish land of Majorca. No coincidence. When their relationship is discovered, Geronimo is sold into slavery while Isabel takes religious vows to protect herself. Are we on track there on how I describe that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's just digress here for a minute. You're an author. You've written several books, but how does your brain, this is a novel, so it's fiction, right? But it comes from your thought pattern. How did you create that narrative? Just give us a look inside your brain. Was it based on you and your partner in life, or things that have transpired?
Well, it was in part inspired by the landscape in Mallorca. I heard of this story of a monk living in the mountains in a cave.
Okay.
And that kind of set things off. And this happened at the same time as we had lockdown in Spain during COVID.
Yeah.
And all these things happening globally where people went into great fear when, the people were dying. In the initial wave, thousands of people were dying from COVID. And I thought, this is really strange how people are behaving in such irrational manner. And then I did this research and found that I found this book by a British historian who analyzed the plague in a small British town.
Yeah.
And there were so many similarities to what was happening in COVID. And that kind of set off the story. And I thought, well, why don't I write this as a novel, as a story, to spread this message into the world, bring this message into the world of how fear and anxiety influences us in many subtle ways, and how important it is to connect with your authenticity. I think if you're grounded and if you're authentic, if you live an authentic life, you become immune to these fears. If you go into your spiritual connection, if you have this inner confidence that you are guided and protected by the divine, you become immune to those distractions.
Very insightful. Everybody, we're here with Reino Gevers, who wrote this book, Sages, Saints, and Sinners. I encourage you to get it, read it, and certainly give a review for it online for him. It's his, I believe, third book. Is that correct? Yeah, then we'll tell you where to get a hold of that at the end. Interesting when you said something about a cave and doing that research on that story, it took my brain into the conversation you and I had before about it when you did the Camino at one point. The weather turned on you, and you ended up staying overnight in a cave. Do you remember that?
Yes, this was during a thunderstorm, and I found this rocky ledge and found protection there. And just to recap, if you spend a night in the Pyrenees early May, there's a real danger of dying from the cold. The mountains get very cold at night, so I knew I had to get to the next village, but of course I couldn't. I was lost, and at that point I said, well, I'll just give it up to the divine. Lead me. And when the rain stopped, I just kept on walking, and then I eventually saw a flicker of light through the trees, and when the clouds started dissipating, and I said, well, there's a village down there. And then so I just followed the light, and eventually I managed to get into this village fairly late at night, completely exhausted.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That in itself is a chapter in a novel, man. But we're just blessed that God was looking after you and you found your way. That would be horrific or very scary for some people. And you were by yourself, I think. I don't think
Yes,
you were
yes, I
with
was
anybody. Yeah.
absolutely alone. Yeah.
So maybe that has something to do with your roots growing up in South Africa and you're a real mountain man, or maybe understand what it's like. I'm going to get back into the book again, Sages, Saints, and Sinners. I have a page here of my own research notes. So please correct me if I'm wrong, put me on the right path. I wrote down here, I wanted to explain to you what I saw the journey was in the book, pardon me. Geronimo's path takes him through enslavement in Algeria, service to a caliph, philosophical education in Constantinople, and eventually to Venice during the plague's devastation. Isabel trains as a healer in Germany's Rupertsberg Monastery, developing medical knowledge that proves crucial during the pandemic. So that was the particular journey that I got out of the book. Tell me about that.
Yes, because both of them follow very divergent paths.
Yeah.
She finds her authenticity as a nun,
Yeah.
doing healing work and singing spiritual songs. That's where she finds alignment within herself, and especially having gained this training from the Hildegard nuns in Germany. She finds this extremely useful during the plague. While Geronimo, of course, he eventually ends up freed from slavery and becomes an employee of a Jewish merchant.
I see.
And this Jewish merchant is a kind of philosopher and a mentor to him, and he gains a lot of philosophical insight from from Buddhism, and from European philosophy. So he goes a bit of a different route, but not to reveal too much of the story. But they do eventually find each other again, right in the middle of the worst time of the plague.
Interesting. I have that on my notes here about the reunion. I won't reveal it to steal the thunder of the story so people can read it. But just a few words that you said that align with what I said here, that they must choose between institutional safety and authentic living. So this whole reunion of how they came back together is a fascinating part of the story. I want to acknowledge the brilliant way you wrote that. I'm going to go into back into Plato's Garden here. We are talking about macro, which is the global influences on the work you've done with this book. And I'm going to just title this Multiple Spiritual Traditions. So your novel, we're talking about, weaves Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism together, in my view. So do you believe institutional religion divides us from the very divine connection it promises?
I do think that institutional religion has its place. I think that being born into a certain religion has a meaning.
Yeah.
I was born into Lutheranism. My family was Lutheran, but if you stay locked into a particular belief system and believe that all other religions are wrong, and that only your religion has the truth, that's where the mistake comes in. Because I think that part of God's plan is diversity. If you look at nature, you have different birds, you have different plants. If you look at humanity, you have people of different colors, races, cultures, languages. Diversity is a creative plan so that we can learn from each other. Looking at our differences, we need to learn from each other. And I think that's the divine purpose. And God gave us different religions so that we can learn from each other's religions. Because each religion highlights a certain aspect of God's creation.
Interesting. I want to riff on that with you. The word religion or religiosity, sometimes you'll hear that. I was born, an innocent boy, as we all are. This is another thing you said that inspired me in the book. We'll get to this in a minute, about how we are born and how we are born. I say innocent and golden, and then this crust develops on a cement crust from the outside world that's put in us of who we not really are. And you say it beautifully in a different way. So I was born and then baptized a Catholic by my mom, and my parents were married in Fiji, the nation of Fiji, with my roots to my great grandfather in India. But my dad was a Hindu when my mom and him met. Okay, so religion too, Hinduism. He practiced it. Then he gets in the army, becomes a commanding officer, and he was actually one of the first 200 men in Fiji to be taken by the Queen into the British forces. So now he's there, and somehow he fell into Mormonism. So now he's gone a Hindu by birth, his influence, now Mormonism, marries a Catholic girl. I get baptized Catholic, and then I see my dad used to take us to all these things that the priest would do in his Hindu faith. And it was so confusing as a young boy. But one of the things after I had my concussion in 2018, which you know the story, my audience does, I fell on my head, and I probably shouldn't be here. I was seriously injured and still struggle with some visual issues, that I turned to the Bible. And in reading that, one of the things I found I believe in is that the word religion isn't what it is for me. It's about a personal relationship. For me, this is what it represents, a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. There is God, his son, Jesus Christ, but it's about a relationship. So I totally align, and I love what you said. I can get caught up in all these other religions, and especially when you look at social media and the infighting that happens, who's right, who's God's right. Mm-hmm. But I found a way through that very much by focusing on one thing. It's about the Father. It's about a personal relationship that I have, and all that other noise. That's the only way I can make sense of it. So I want to thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to a comment I have here about my experience reading the book about deeper themes. I found that you weave together multiple spiritual traditions, so all these things we just talked about, and you explore how crisis strips away false personas, forcing characters to confront their authentic selves. So the themes are really rich in this book. It's one of the reasons why I highly recommend it. So going back to Plato and the questions, I call this empty spaces and soul whispers. So you believe it's in nature's quiet spaces where we hear the universe's whispers. I'm projecting that. That's what I feel. One of the things you believe. Why, if that's true, and correct me if it's not, why is this ancient practice more crucial than ever?
Well, I think our world today, our modern world, suffers essentially from disconnect from the spiritual self. What we're seeing in the past, perhaps half century, is people losing their religions in the face of all these scandals which we've had with institutional religions, the sexual scandals, the abuse, the financial scandals, and so forth. But nothing's replaced that. So for many people, religion was a home that they've now lost. And what's replacing it is political religion. And what does political religion do? It inflames, it incites. It does the same that religion does in a certain way. It says, we have the truth. You are wrong. You are the enemy. Our tribe is where we belong, and everyone else is the enemy. Yeah. We see that especially in the United States at the moment. Very divided country, and a lot of that virus is spreading to other countries, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So my message is really to immerse yourself in nature, in experiential spirituality, because that's where you find, you feel spirituality, by immersing yourself in the quiet solitude of nature. Because what happens, I think, the divine expresses himself, herself. I don't think God is male or female, but God expresses himself in creation, in the world, in the natural world. And part of the evolutionary process of the natural world, of course, is that the constant change. We see that in the seasons of life.
Yeah, that's a nice metaphor about walking in nature and the seasons. And I found some of my calmest moments processing life have been walking through nature here locally, as I mentioned to you. I'm going to go ahead.
Yes, and going back to that, I mean, there's some fascinating studies, and there's our link back to burnout and mental health, a study by the University of Barcelona, that the green and blue spaces of nature actually significantly reduce your stress hormones, your cortisol levels in the body. Just spending 15 minutes a day in the blue and green spaces of nature already have a huge calming effect on mind, body, and soul.
That's pretty cool. I mean, imagine the days if we go back, like some of our kids haven't experienced this. My daughter's 28 now. We grew up with no internet, and you went outside and you went for walks, right? My wife and I take ourselves back to that era in our life now where we'll hold hands and walk through nature. Yeah. I just mentioned we came back from a vacation up in the interior of our province where we were at this desert oasis. Did a lot of walking. And I'm just saying to digress about the Camino, which you've done 12, which is remarkable. There's a part of the Camino called the Meseta. You can comment on this if you can. But a lot of people have said when they go on that Meseta, first of all, tell us what it is. You literally lose yourself into that, and you come in touch with your thoughts and your body. Actually, everything else dials down, the noise of the brain, because there is nothing but that long walk and you and yourself. Just comment on that.
Yes, well, the Meseta, that's the middle part of the Camino Frances. It's really flat, boring landscape. There's no trees. There's just right. a flat country, and a lot of people walking the Camino tend to avoid that section because it's boring. It's especially those long legs where you do like more than 30 kilometers a day, just simply walking down one straight path. But I found that is, and a lot of other pilgrims who've walked this section say this is what happens. You go really deep into yourself because there's no distractions.
Exactly. Yeah, and if we connect the dots here, we mesh all this together. When we talk about the micro part of your story, you personally going through that career and seeing the guys dropping like flies around you in your industry. So there's burnout, and you had this call, the pain was there, and then you went for this walk. Would it be fair to say from what you just taught us that by going for that walk, if we can put you at that moment on the Meseta, when you're in that high stress environment in your career and your job, the brain is working at such a high level of thinking, you can't stop and dial that down to really find how you truly feel. What is the source of my pain? What is the real issue? How can I find my way through it? And then we become reactive, not responsive to that pain. And some will do dumb things like start drinking, or maybe we'll quit our jobs thinking we can't deal with this. But going on that Meseta, dialing down all that noise, all you have is yourself. And would it be fair to say that that's what partially transformed you back then, was that walk?
I think it's the whole of the process. And there's a saying among pilgrims that the Camino really starts after the Camino, because you could see the journey as part of a living process.
Yeah.
Walking the Camino triggers something within, and then the real change happens after coming back from walking the Camino. You realize you had these insights while walking, and then you start putting these insights back into action when you get back, because you're not the same person when you get back.
Wow. Now I want to do it even more. That is absolutely why when you watch videos who people have done this Camino walk, and those have come back. I've said that exact thing. It's like you scripted it. You're not the same person. And I think what you taught us here, it's a teaching moment, everyone on the show here with Reino, is that it's to then reflect when you come back, then reflect on what you learned, and that shapes your path forward. I, for example, when we went away recently on our vacation, I was so in touch with nature and just myself that I started questioning a lot of things in my life, several things I'm involved with and doing. And I was thinking, like, why didn't I think about that before? It's because, as I feel, we're on this unthinking treadmill of life where the brain, through neuroscience, our brains are working at such a fast level. Thoughts are here, they're gone, here, they're gone, here, they're gone. It's like, let's slow down. Let's get back into a couple more things here as we then move towards the latter part here of the story. This has become a great interview. I'm having a lot of fun. Are you feeling engaged and enjoying?
I'm enjoying this, Tom.
Okay. I sometimes the publicists you came to me because I knew you through your work. One of my favorite books that you started with was Deep Walking, and I tell people now, please go get that one. But Reino, I read every book if I have a guest before I do the interview. And I think it's one of the gifts about your body of work is you're an author and you write. And so I'm learning this particularly through my university work now, that all we need isn't within us now. It's a falsehood. That's the mantra in personal development that I've heard through some of the gurus is just look deep down, inner, inside, find yourself. The truth is we have to go outside of ourselves and have conversations or engage with research and another. And then it's what happens in the spaces between us. That knowledge you're giving through your books and all is now, and your stories are coming at me, and they're in this space in between. I'm now critically thinking about all that. I'm embodying it, turning it into myself. And then I can go away, like you said, after the Camino, reflect on all this and say, how do I take what I learned from Reino, his stories, what he wrote about, and put that back into the world, take that knowledge and put it into action to make the world better, make my life better. So such a treasure is some of the work that you're doing there. I want to just go to the last paragraph I wrote down on my note sheet here, that I'll read it out to you. The novel, in my view, demonstrates Gevers' core philosophy that transformation often requires breaking everything we thought we knew about ourselves, and that the longest pilgrimage is the journey home to our authentic nature. So here's the kind of question to riff on. I call this becoming who we were meant to be. And I think this is kind of your words. You say we need to become who we were born to be. If everyone did this inner work, how would our world transform? Tell us what that means and answer that.
Well, you mentioned earlier on that a child is born innocent and pure.
Yes.
And then what happens when a child starts growing up, especially when the child goes to school? It gets schooled and indoctrinated with concepts. And how often does a child get forced into a certain category, forced to conform to certain expectations, especially from parents? Parents have huge expectations on their child, and often don't allow that child to develop its own authenticity.
Yes.
And I think that is so essential. And often people only find out their true authenticity during midlife, and find out in the middle part of their life that all the time they placed the ladder against the wrong wall. This comes during a time of crises, or a mental breakdown, or some financial disaster, loss of a job, whatever. And that's when they're forced to look deep inside and realize, look, this is not me. This is not what I'm supposed to be living.
Yeah.
And if you look at a child in the early stage of of a child's life, 3-4 years old, they develop such joy with
That's
small
true.
things.
Yes.
With small things. And in my life, I look back and said, what gave me joy as a child? where was I really connected and happy? It was often spending time in nature, climbing
Interesting.
trees,
Yeah.
swimming in rivers, connecting with nature.
I love that part about the children. Again, taking me back to a vacation we just were on. We're sitting on the beach overlooking the lake, and this body of water is in a desert. And the kids were squealing and playing, and they had this bouncy castle thing that was actually moored into the lake. And I read something about that what you said too in my early research on mental health, that if you want to be mentally healthy, go watch children play. And you're right. Their minds are
And
so.
this,
Yeah.
and this, going back to my father, I think really led to his nervous breakdown, because from what I heard from his siblings, from my uncle, was that he was a very talented artist as a child,
Oh boy.
and and his teachers and his, I think my grandfather was also largely responsible, killed that talent off. Um,
It's so insightful. This is a story, by the way, that I can get on my soapbox. I have to be careful I don't grandstand on it, but it is a story that really is something that comes up over and over. I've now done over 300 interviews on my show. I'm very proud of all the people who've come through, but man, all the people who come through, there is a thread somewhere in many of their stories about how someone broke their joy, or somebody took it away, or told them that don't waste your time painting. And that wired into the unconscious thinking of a child, and later in life it affects everything. Words matter. Yeah, joy's a big thing. I'll throw this out at you. I just thought about it. What would happen if world leaders took a 500-mile walk before every major decision? What do you think?
Great idea. And you know that the Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle, took his students for a walk. He
Yeah.
did his teachings while walking with his students.
I'll put this back on the screen, and you just nailed it. When we introduced Plato's Garden, there's Aristotle and Plato. And yeah, I always say that the way they learned was walking and talking. I think that's just brilliant what you just said.
There they are in that image, walking and talking.
Hey, if every world leader, I was just thinking, took a 500-mile walk before major decisions, nobody would be in the office anymore. and maybe the companies would be more effective and work more efficiently because the boss is not there. That is too funny. Hey, we're getting to the last segment here. And so just recapping, we've gone through micro, mezzo, and macro. And through dialogue, what you've heard, everyone, is connecting the dots to Reino's story in all those areas. So now start doing critical thinking, whether you watch this back again, and what's the deeper meaning of all this and behind his story. The last segment here is called The Unwritten Chapter. I'm having more fun with this one now. We added it about 6 months ago. And so let me just throw a few things at you to talk about. Beyond the 12th Camino, let's start there. After 12 pilgrimages and helping countless others find their path, because I understand you do guided work with people, what's the next frontier that both excites and terrifies you?
What really excites me all the time is that even walking the same path several times over, you always see new things you didn't see the last time. And so it's like reading a good book several times. You discover while reading it a second or third time that there are things you didn't find the first time, or contemplating a painting and several times revisiting that painting, revisiting that path, you rediscover. Yes, what what am I afraid of? I'm really afraid of where the world is going at the moment. It strikes me with real fear that there is so much unawareness, and that there is so much susceptibility to fanaticism, and
Yes.
that we currently have world leaders that are very uncentered, and that obviously seem to inflame the darkest side of humanity.
Yeah, very helpful thoughts. Just you see something on the screen here. This is inside my studio. I've been filling a pad of paper here madly with notes. I call them Reinoisms, and I wrote down here fear, and then something that came out of that word for me was listening to just now was truth in media. There's a high responsibility for those in the media space, and you're in that by being an author, a podcaster, a thought leader, that it's okay to put out your opinions. That's why we do these long forms. I always position what I say as this is my opinion, but I challenge my guests to go out and find facts. And you can, now there's great search engines like AI. There's Google Scholar if you want to find scholarly articles. I'm just helping the audience here with how I work through this. But if somebody says something to me, I will go afterwards, and I won't be lazy. I'll go do a little critical thinking, which means having thoughts about your thought and going looking for some facts. And then my brain can decide. And I want to just add to that when I did my cognitive behavioral therapy, it was a mental health course they put me in to deal with what was going on in my brain when I had my concussion. I learned that you have the power to change your thoughts and how they behave. A lot of people don't know that. And as you change your thoughts, how they behave, right? I'm just telling you what I've learned, that the neural structural architecture of the brain can change. It's called neuroplasticity. So what I'm saying is that responding to what you said, how I deal with it, in the world, yes, we have leaders who can be unbalanced. We have news that's not accurate, news that only puts spin or opinion. And so one of the ways to deal with that is go do your own research, find other sources, and then step back and have thoughts about all those thoughts. And then you decide, does this narrative serve me well to be happy and healthy? And exactly. So thank you, because reading the book and your perspectives, even using the story in Sages, Saints, and Sinners, the parallel narrative to human life and what these characters in the book encountered through their journey, it really gave me a different way of thinking. So thank you. The second thought in the unwritten chapter is this: the choice Isabel and Geronimo made in your book, your characters choose authentic love over institutional safety. In my view, that's what I got out of it. But what does their medieval choice teach us about finding meaning today?
It's no, in that sense, it's no different than today's world, where in medieval times you had the church that defined meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
But in today's world, you have countless voices telling you what to believe and how to behave. Countless voices.
Yeah.
So finding that truth has become very difficult. Who am I really? Is it true? Does it connect with my authenticity? And if you go into your intuitive wisdom and go into contemplation and silence, you know what is true.
Yeah.
Because what is true is what connects with the divine. And what does the divine teach us? Be kind, be gentle, come from the heart, treat all living beings with respect. That's what we need to learn.
That's wonderful. And going back again to your very simple strategy that I learned about deep walking when I first interviewed you. I'm just simplifying this for the people who hear this, that you don't have to make it complicated. Reino says, go for a walk in nature. But I recently want to just share this with you, something I just learned, that in the brain actually releases all the neuromodulators, chemicals that make us feel the way we feel. It's no magic. And so if we can change our thoughts, we can actually change some of these neurotransmitters that are released. So for example, oxytocin, I know they call it the love chemical. It actually makes you feel joy and happiness. Mm-hmm. And so I did an exercise that I found out of a mini workbook, and it said, go out in nature, go for a walk where you've been before. And this time lean in and notice everything you never noticed before. So I took a journal, and I wrote down all the things. I've been doing this trail walk forever, like for years here with Anna, and I go on my own a lot. It's about 5 kilometers. Man, the things I noticed along the way I've never seen before, because I took the time to slow down. And so apparently what the research I did on the brain says is that when we're in a state of focus, our brain then sees something that is high value, provided it nourishes us, and it releases oxytocin, and we start feeling good and feeling better. So I'm really excited about this conversation with you, because we can actually hack the brain and actually shift and change just by doing something like what you've taught us through your work and going for a walk, leaning in, noticing things we've never noticed. You said it. You just taught us that. And I wanted to thank you, because that's exactly the experience I've been having doing something like just walking in nature. The last question for you, and then we'll move to wrap up. The unwritten pilgrimage. If you could design a pilgrimage route for the modern world, where would it lead?
A pilgrimage for the modern world. We need to connect with our inner spirituality. We need to reconnect with the divine.
Yeah.
We need to reconnect with Mother Earth. We need to reconnect with nature. We need to find ourselves again.
Oh, I love it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'll let you finish before we give you a surprise here.
Yeah, no. That's it basically. We need to reconnect.
It's as simple as that. Dial down all the noise and get in touch with your body and your thoughts. And there's so many ways to do it. And right here with you, Reino, reading and learning to go and be in touch with nature is such a great thing. I'm going to surprise you now. Are you ready for a reveal of a review on your book? Hold up the book again and just show us that and tell us the title. You're the author.
Sages, Saints, and Sinners.
There it is. Beautiful book. Okay, you can put that down now. I'm going to add to the stage now something that I'm really excited about. So I've read the book, as I said, and done a lot of thinking and written an international review. So this is posted on Amazon.ca. For those of you out there, authors' works aren't known unless you read it and tell somebody about it by posting a review. So I'm going to call on everyone, call to action, Reino, to read the book, but put a review up. You can do it on Amazon. Another great place is goodreads.com, which I know you know about. So this one's on Amazon, and it should be live any day now. I'm going to read it from a piece of paper I have here because that's too small on the screen. So just sit back and enjoy this if you can. Reviewer, myself, Tom Dutta, 5 stars I gave it. The title, A Medieval Mirror for Modern Souls. That's the title of my review. Reino Gevers has crafted something extraordinary in Sages, Saints, and Sinners, a novel that reads like a spiritual autobiography disguised as a historical fiction. This isn't just a story about 14th century plague. It's a profound meditation on how crisis breaks us open to transformation. Following Isabel and Geronimo's forbidden love through the Black Death, I found myself confronting my own spiritual constraints and authentic desires. Gevers doesn't romanticize medieval life. The plague scenes are visceral and heartbreaking, but he finds luminous truth in the darkness. The parallel between medieval pestilence and modern burnout culture is brilliant and, quite frankly, unsettling. What sets this apart is Gevers' lived wisdom. His 12 Camino pilgrimages and transition from journalism to spiritual mentoring infuse every page with authentic insight. When Geronimo chooses love over religious vows, or when Isabel breaks free from institutional constraints, these aren't plot devices. They're hard-won truths about choosing authenticity over conformity. The writing is both lyrical and grounded, moving seamlessly between intimate character moments and sweeping historical drama. Gevers understands that transformation often requires breaking everything we thought we knew about ourselves. This book will challenge readers to examine their own religious vows, the unconscious agreements that keep us trapped in lives that don't serve our souls. Perfect for anyone questioning their path, seeking deeper meaning, or wondering if it's possible to completely reinvent themselves after 50. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes we must lose everything to find who we really are. Congratulations, Reino, on your review.
Thank you very much, Tom. You really summed it up very nicely, that the key part of the message. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. This will be coming to you just as a keepsake from me. And again, I'll send you the link. It'll be on Amazon. Everyone, you can actually, when you're on Amazon, find that review I posted amongst others. There's lots of great stuff there. So let's move to wrap up here. We inducted you a while back when you did an interview into the Quiet Warrior community. So you already have been told that you're part of the 1%, the doers in the world who are making a difference. So why don't you have the last word? Tell us where we can find your body of work, get a hold of you, and anything maybe that you haven't said today that you want to say as you leave us.
Well, you can connect with me on my website, reinogevers.com. You find me on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Yeah. And I have a podcast called Living to Be with some great guests. And my message for everyone out there, take a walk in nature, reconnect, take a deep inhaling and exhaling breath and find out who you really are.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that. And everyone, live with true purpose, live with passion, live the life that you deserve and desire, like you've heard here from Reino. And we'll see you all again on the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. Thank you, Reino.
Thank you, Tom. It was great.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
Okay, standby. I'm going to take us offline. We're still live here. Still have people watching. It's fantastic. They've stayed on with us. Hold on there. I'm going to end this.